My name is Jessica Montgomery. I'm 29, an elementary school teacher, and until a few months ago, my life was painfully ordinary. I spent my days shaping young minds and my evenings trying to fit into a family that never truly accepted me. Married into old money, I often felt like an outsider at their lavish dinners, their judgment masked behind polite smiles. But nothing, not their coldness, nor my quiet resentment, prepared me for the day I was left alone with my 8-year-old niece Lily. Because within hours I would uncover a secret so dark it shattered everything I thought I knew about the Montgomery legacy. My name is Jessica Montgomery, and I'm 29 years old. I teach second grade at Willow Creek Elementary, and up until a few months ago I thought I had life pretty much figured out. I woke up every morning at 5:30 a.m., drank my burnt coffee with a splash of cheap almond milk, and drove 20 minutes to a classroom filled with sticky fingers, toothless smiles, and the endless chorus of Miss Montgomery. Can you help me? My students were my pride, my sanity, and my proof that I was doing something meaningful in this world. But at night, my life felt like a performance. I'd come home to Michael, my husband of 3 years, who kissed me on the cheek absent-mindedly while reading investment reports from his father's company. We lived in a modest townhome, decorated with my Target clearance finds and my grandmother's old quilts, and while Michael always said he loved the cozy vibe, I knew his family thought it was quaint in the way rich people say quaint when they really mean embarrassing. You see, I married into old money. The Montgomerys aren't just wealthy, they're the kind of family with their names etched into hospital wings, plaques at country clubs, and annual features in society magazines. To them, I was the school teacher their youngest son married because he had a rebellious streak, before settling down to become a junior executive in the family's real estate empire. I wasn't glamorous. I didn't grow up attending cotillions or ski trips in Aspen. I grew up in a 2-bedroom rental with a single mom who worked double shifts at Denny's so I could buy books at the Scholastic Fair, and I was proud of that. But to the Montgomerys, it was just unfortunate. Still, I tried. I showed up at every formal dinner with a carefully chosen dress that was always somehow just casual enough to earn Eleanor Montgomery's frozen smile and whispered jabs. I smiled politely when my father-in-law Robert asked if I ever considered a more lucrative career path. I laughed at Michael's older brother's dry jokes, even though he never once asked me a question about myself. Every family gathering was an exercise in restraint. Smile, nod. Don't let them know their opinions cut you open like glass. I thought I knew them. I thought their cruelty was limited to passive-aggressive insults and judgmental glares. I thought the worst thing about being part of the Montgomery family was never quite being enough for them. But then came Lily. Amanda, Michael's older sister, had Lily when she was in her 20s with a man no one ever spoke about. She'd always referred to Lily as my little burden in that joking tone people use when they don't actually find something funny. The family described Lily as a severely disabled child, mute, immobile, requiring round-the-clock care. I had seen her at gatherings strapped into a specialized wheelchair, her head lolling to the side as she stared into nothingness. I always felt a strange ache in my chest when I looked at her. Something in her eyes didn't match the vacant expression her body projected. But what did I know? I was a teacher, not a neurologist. Then one Tuesday morning, as I graded spelling tests over lukewarm coffee, I got the call from Eleanor. She didn't ask. She informed me. Jessica, darling, we need you to stay at the house and watch Lily while we're in Hawaii next week. The nurses had to be let go. You understand. It wasn't a question. It never was. Michael had already agreed, of course, without asking me first. It was just for 2 weeks, and his mother promised his father would call the superintendent to arrange my time off. Because rules didn't apply to the Montgomerys. Schedules, professional obligations, personal choices, all of it was malleable under the weight of their money. And so, a week later, I found myself standing in the foyer of their sprawling mansion, my husband kissing my cheek before he left with the rest of his family for a luxury vacation I wasn't invited to. "You'll be okay, right, babe?" he asked already halfway out the door. I forced a smile. "Of course. Have fun." As the town cars disappeared down the driveway, I turned to look at Lily sitting silently by the window, her thin arms resting limply on the wheelchair's armrests. Her hair was brushed into 2 perfect braids tied with silk ribbons. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge that her mother hadn't even said goodbye. I sighed, feeling the crushing loneliness of that cavernous house press in on me. "Well, I guess it's just you and me now, Lily," I said softly. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. I didn't know that within hours I'd discover the truth about Lily. That she wasn't mute, she wasn't paralyzed, she wasn't sick at all. I didn't know that she would stand in the kitchen doorway that night, her little hands trembling as she braced herself against the frame, and whisper in a voice both terrified and determined, "They want my $4 million. Please help me." That was the moment my entire world shifted. That was the moment I realized I was no longer just an outsider in a wealthy family. I was a threat to their secrets, and they would do anything to silence me. The Montgomery family was the kind of family that people read about in glossy magazines or watched in prestige dramas on HBO. Old money, old secrets, and an old belief that their last name made them better than everyone else. They lived in a mansion perched high above the town, an architectural monstrosity of Italian stone columns, manicured hedges, and windows so large you could see your reflection in them from the driveway. When I first visited after Michael and I started dating, I'd stood there gripping his hand, overwhelmed by its cold perfection. He'd laughed and squeezed my fingers. "Don't worry, they're just people." But that wasn't true. Robert Montgomery wasn't just people. He was an empire in a tailored suit. At 71, he still ran the family's real estate conglomerate with the same iron fist he'd used to build it from nothing. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a full head of white hair, meticulously combed back, he radiated authority. Whenever he walked into a room, conversation stalled mid-sentence. People turned, people obeyed. He had that effect on Michael, too. One glare from Robert could reduce my confident, loving husband into a stammering child, desperate to please. Then there was Eleanor Montgomery. If Robert was the iron, Eleanor was the ice. She embodied that terrifying elegance that only money can buy, hair so perfectly coiffed it never moved, makeup so flawless it looked airbrushed, in real-life eyes that calculated everything from your shoes to your vocabulary in under a second. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her passive-aggressive compliments could flay your dignity without smudging her lipstick. "Jessica, dear," she once purred as I arrived for Christmas dinner in a forest green cashmere sweater dress I'd saved 3 paychecks to buy. That outfit is so brave. I could never pull off something so casual at a formal dinner. I spent the entire evening staring at my plate, my appetite drowned under shame. Amanda Michael's older sister and Lily's mother was 35 and had never held a real job a day in her life. She floated from spa appointments to charity luncheons to luxury yoga retreats funded entirely by her trust fund and the family's inexhaustible connections. Amanda was beautiful in the icy, fragile way of porcelain dolls and entitled beyond redemption. She spoke about her daughter like she was an accessory, something to pose for family Christmas cards, then lock away in a private wing of the mansion. I'd never seen her hold Lily for more than 5 minutes at a time. James, the eldest Montgomery sibling, was a corporate lawyer who had modeled himself entirely after their father. Impeccable suits, Rolex watches, and an expression that suggested he was silently judging you with every breath you took. In 3 years of marriage to Michael, I could count on one hand the number of sentences James had spoken directly to me. It was as if acknowledging my existence might tarnish his position in the family hierarchy. And then there was Michael, my husband, the youngest of the Montgomery children, kind, gentle, smart, and endlessly patient with my anxieties. He was everything his family wasn't, which is probably why I fell for him so completely. But even Michael had his fatal flaw, conflict avoidance, especially when it came to them. He spent our entire marriage trying to keep the peace between me and his parents, between Amanda's selfishness and his guilt, between his own values and the Montgomery code of silence. Sometimes it felt like our life together was a tug of war, and I was always losing to the other side. From the very first day I entered their home as Michael's girlfriend, I was treated as an outsider. The daughter of a waitress and a truck mechanic, a public school teacher with scuffed flats and calloused hands from hot glue gun burns. My noble profession was praised in the same tone people used to talk about shelter dogs. Cute, pitiful, not something they'd ever choose for themselves. Teaching must be so fulfilling, Eleanor once told me, swirling her Pinot Noir. I mean, obviously it's not practical financially, but it must be rewarding to, serve. Serve. That word stuck with me for days after. Nothing I did was ever enough. My cooking was quaint. My taste in home decor was adorable, reminds me of those TV shows where they redo homes on a budget. Every family dinner, every holiday, every brief weekend visit felt like being trapped in a gilded cage with lions circling, waiting for me to stumble. But I endured it. For Michael. Because he loved me. Because he saw me when no one else did. Because every time Eleanor's words cut me open, he would kiss my forehead that night and whisper, "Don't listen to them, Jess. They don't know you." I do. I thought that was enough. But Lily changed everything. From the moment I first saw her at a Thanksgiving dinner strapped into her wheelchair, eyes half closed under heavy lids, hair brushed so harshly her scalp was red, I felt something shift inside me. The rest of the family ignored her entirely. They talked over her head, set her plate aside untouched, never asked how she was feeling. To them, she was just there. A silent burden to wheel in and out for appearances. But when I knelt down and looked into her eyes that day, something flickered there. A spark of awareness, of understanding. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but it haunted me. I told myself it was wishful thinking, that I just couldn't bear the idea of a child trapped in her own body, that the Montgomerys had consulted the best doctors in the country, and who was I to question them? Who was I? Just a teacher. Just an outsider. Just a nobody in a family of somebodies. But all of that changed the day they left her in my care. Because that was the day I learned the truth. The day I realized that behind the designer suits and charity galas, behind the perfect hair and pearly smiles, behind every casual cruelty they inflicted on me, was something so much darker. They weren't just unkind. They weren't just arrogant. They were monsters. And they had been slowly killing their own child to steal her future. I had no idea that my life was about to become a war zone, that my love for a little girl I barely knew would force me to stand alone against a powerful, ruthless family, that the woman who spent her days teaching spelling and reading would become the only person who could save Lily Montgomery from the people who called themselves her family. But that's exactly what happened. And I promise you, this story only gets darker from here. Lily Montgomery was 8 years old, but she looked much younger. Tiny, almost fragile, with pale skin that seemed translucent under the mansion's cold chandeliers. Her hair was a soft honey blonde, usually braided tight enough to pull at her temples, and her blue eyes, large round framed by impossibly long lashes, were her only features that suggested life. But even then they were so often half closed, staring at nothing. The family described her as special needs with the same dismissive pity they used when talking about homeless people on the street. According to them, Lily had been born with a severe neurological disorder that left her unable to speak, move, or control any basic bodily functions independently. Amanda told everyone her daughter was a vegetable, though she preferred to use softer words like "my little angel who needs so much care." I had only ever seen Lily at family gatherings. Thanksgiving, Christmas, the occasional summer dinner party. She would be wheeled in by a nurse or caregiver, her tiny body propped up with stiff cushions, her head rolling slightly to the side. Sometimes her mouth hung open. Sometimes her eyes flickered toward voices, but she never reacted beyond that. Amanda never spoke to her directly. Eleanor would order staff to adjust her wheelchair's position so she was more presentable in the family photos. Robert rarely even glanced her way. To them, she wasn't a person. She was a burden, an inconvenience. An object that required expensive medical equipment and full-time nurses, something to be pitied in public and ignored in private. But for me, there was always something. Something in the way her eyes followed Amanda with guarded wariness. Something in the way her breathing changed slightly when people spoke around her as though she was listening. Really listening. I once saw a single tear slide down her cheek as Amanda laughed loudly with friends nearby. I remember wondering how a child who was supposedly so far gone could cry at the sound of her mother's laughter. I asked Michael about her once early in our marriage. We were brushing our teeth side by side in our cramped bathroom. "Do you ever, I don't know, feel like Lily understands more than people think?" I asked hesitantly. He spat out toothpaste and shrugged. "Maybe. Mom says she's pretty much brain dead. Dad paid for the best neurologists. They all say the same thing." I nodded, swallowing the unease in my throat. Who was I to argue with neurologists and millions of dollars in medical opinions? I was just Jessica Montgomery, second-grade teacher, wife outsider. Still, it haunted me. The emptiness in her gaze that felt performed somehow like a mask slipping slightly before snapping back into place. When Eleanor called to tell me I'd be caring for Lily for 2 weeks, I felt a visceral fear I couldn't fully name. Fear of failing her. Fear of doing something wrong with her complex medical needs. Fear of being trapped alone in that massive house with a child I didn't know how to reach, but mostly I think it was the fear of what being alone with her might reveal. Amanda gave me a rushed crash course the day before they left. She barely glanced at Lily as she packed bikinis into her Louis Vuitton luggage. "She needs her medication 3 times a day. It's all labeled, 'Don't miss a dose or she gets difficult,'" Amanda said dismissively. "Difficult how?" I asked, alarmed. Amanda's eyes flicked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Just keep her on schedule. Everything's in here." She tossed me a thick binder filled with medical charts feeding schedules and emergency contact lists. I skimmed through it that evening. There were pages upon pages of prescriptions, sedatives, muscle relaxants, antipsychotics, anticonvulsants. Enough to sedate an elephant, I thought grimly. But again, what did I know? I wasn't a doctor. The next morning after Michael left with his family, I wheeled Lily into the living room. Her chair was motorized, expensive, pristine. I positioned her in front of the television, playing a baby cartoon. The instructions said she enjoyed familiar programs. I felt silly speaking to her, but I did anyway. "I'm going to make some breakfast." "Okay, Lily, I'll be right in the kitchen if you need anything." Her eyes didn't move. Her mouth stayed slightly open. For all appearances, she was a silent doll trapped in a broken body. I turned away, but a sharp pang shot through my chest. The feeling of being watched. I spun back around, half expecting her to be looking at me. But her gaze remained fixed on the TV, unblinking. Hours later, as I prepared her evening medication, crushing an array of pills into her liquid nutritional shake, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The dosage amount seemed so high. The side effects listed in the binder included severe drowsiness, cognitive impairment, respiratory suppression. My teacher brain rebelled. If one of my students were on this much medication, I'd be calling CPS in a heartbeat. But I told myself again, you're not a doctor. Don't interfere. Follow the instructions. Keep the peace. And so I did. I stirred the thick liquid, carried it back into the living room, and prepared to feed her as instructed. That was when I realized she was gone. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought I might faint. The wheelchair was empty. The blanket that had been tucked around her legs lay crumpled on the seat. Panic exploded inside me. How could she move? Where was she? Was she hurt? I spun around, scanning the cavernous room, the marble floors echoing the frantic pounding of my pulse, and then from the kitchen doorway, a small voice, soft but clear, shattered my reality. They want my $4 million. Please help me. I turned slowly, gripping the counter for support. There she stood, on her own 2 feet, wobbly, trembling, one tiny hand braced against the door frame, but standing. Her eyes, those intelligent eyes I'd always suspected were hiding something, locked onto mine with desperate clarity. In that moment, I realized everything I thought I knew about Lily Montgomery was a lie. I stood frozen, the wooden spoon slipping from my trembling fingers and clattering to the marble floor. The noise echoed through the cavernous kitchen, but I barely registered it. My eyes were locked on Lily. She was standing. For a child who was supposed to be paralyzed since birth, her posture was unsteady, knees wobbling and one hand clutching the door frame for balance, but she was upright. Her breathing came in sharp little gasps, as if every moment on her feet cost her immense effort. Tears streamed silently down her pale cheeks. Her lips quivered, and when she spoke, her voice was raspy and thin, but heartbreakingly clear. They want my $4 million, she whispered. Please help me. For a moment, my brain refused to process the words. The world narrowed to the sight of her small frame shaking in the doorway. The child I had fed medication like clockwork just hours earlier. The child I had been told could not speak, walk, or even control her own body. Yet here she was looking at me with terrified, intelligent eyes, pleading for her life in words she wasn't supposed to know how to form. I took a shaky step forward, hands raised as if approaching a frightened animal. Lily, honey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, I whispered. My voice cracked under the weight of disbelief and fear. Come here. Let me help you sit down. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees with a small cry of pain. I rushed forward, catching her under the arms and gently lifting her onto one of the kitchen stools. Her body was alarmingly light, as though she had been starved for years, her limbs thin under her cotton pajamas. She clutched my wrist with surprising strength. Please don't tell them I talked to you. She gasped, tears dripping onto her lap. They'll punish me again. My heart splintered in my chest. I crouched in front of her, trying to keep my voice calm even as my mind screamed in horror. Lily, what do you mean, again has someone hurt you? Before? She swallowed hard, her small shoulders shaking violently. Her voice was barely audible, forcing me to lean in closer to hear her whispered confession. When I was little, before Granny and Pops died, I could talk. I could run. Mommy used to let me play. But then they died in the car crash, and Mommy started giving me the medicine. She said it would make me sleepy so Grandma and Grandpa wouldn't be mad at me for making noise. But the medicine, it made my head fuzzy. My legs, they stopped working. I couldn't talk anymore. She sucked in a shuddering breath, her tiny fingers tightening around mine like a vice. They told everyone I was born sick, but I wasn't. I remember singing songs with Granny. I remember counting butterflies in the garden. But then Mommy said if I ever talked or moved when other people were around, they'd send me away forever. Somewhere dark. Somewhere with no windows. She said no one would ever love me there. The words poured out in broken sobs, each syllable piercing through my chest like shards of glass. I blinked back tears, forcing myself to remain strong for her. "Lily, why would they do that to you?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage and confusion. "What money are you talking about?" She sniffled and lifted her tear-streaked face to mine. Her eyes, though red and swollen, were sharp with awareness far beyond her years. "Granny and Pops, they left me money. Lots of money. Mommy says it's mine when I turn 18. But if I can't talk or move, then Mommy and Grandma and Grandpa get to keep it forever." The air rushed out of my lungs in a strangled gasp. I felt lightheaded, the kitchen spinning around me as her words sank in. They were drugging her, keeping her paralyzed, stealing her life for money. "How do you know about this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Who told you?" She hesitated, then lifted her chin with a flicker of fierce pride breaking through her fear. "I taught myself to read," she whispered, when no one was watching. "Mommy leaves papers everywhere. I read them when she's out. I have a diary. I write everything down so I don't forget." For a moment, all I could do was stare at her in stunned silence. This was no brain-dead child. This was an intelligent, courageous little girl surviving unimaginable abuse. "Can you show me your diary?" I asked gently. She looked toward the hallway, terror flashing in her eyes. Then she slid off the stool with a whimper of pain and reached for my hand. Her fingers were like ice. "Come on," she whispered urgently. I hid it. "You have to promise you won't tell them I can walk or talk." "I promise," I whispered back, squeezing her hand. "I promise, Lily." She led me slowly down the hallway, limping heavily, her small body trembling with each step. We entered her bedroom, a cold, sterile space that looked more like a hospital room than a child's sanctuary. Medical equipment beeped quietly. A feeding pump. A ventilator she clearly didn't need. In the corners, I spotted tiny black domes, cameras, watching her every move. She crawled onto the bed, grimacing in pain, and reached under the thin hospital mattress. She pulled out a small pink diary decorated with faded unicorn stickers and several folded documents. My heart twisted as she handed them to me with shaking hands. "I write everything down," she whispered. "The medicine, the things they say about my money, the times they hurt me when I didn't pretend well enough." I flipped open the diary, scanning page after page of neat, cramped handwriting. Her words were simple but painfully precise. March 3rd, Mommy gave me 4 pink pills. I couldn't keep my head up. Grandpa said I was being good. Grandma said I looked perfect for the guests. April 12th, I tried not to take the yellow pill. Mommy pinched me really hard on my arm. She said if I don't take it, she'll lock me in the dark closet again. May 6th, Grandpa said when I turn 18, I'll go to a hospital forever because I'm too stupid to take care of my money. He laughed. Grandma laughed too. Each entry burned into my soul, searing away any lingering doubt about what I needed to do. I closed the diary, fighting back sobs as I reached out and cradled her tear-stained face in my hands. "Lily," I whispered fiercely, "I promise you I will not let them hurt you again. Do you understand me? I will protect you, no matter what it takes." Her shoulders trembled as she burst into silent tears, clutching the diary to her chest like a lifeline. "Please don't let them send me away," she sobbed. "I don't want to be alone forever." I pulled her into my arms, feeling her tiny frame melt against mine. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same again. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about saving a child who had been imprisoned in her own body by the people meant to love her most. I had no plan, no idea how to take down a family as powerful as the Montgomerys. But as I held Lily close, feeling her heartbeat fluttering against mine like a trapped bird, only one thought repeated in my mind. They will not win. Not this time. I would burn their empire to the ground before I let them take another breath of freedom away from this child. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily standing in the kitchen doorway, her voice trembling as she whispered about her stolen life. Long after she fell asleep, curled beside me in the guest room far from the cameras in her sterile bedroom, I sat awake staring at the dark ceiling, my mind spinning with a single relentless question. How do I save her morning arrived gray and heavy. Rain drummed steadily against the mansion's towering windows. I brewed coffee in the silent kitchen, glancing down the hallway to check on Lily every few minutes. When she woke, she looked at me with wide, terrified eyes, as if unsure whether the previous night had been a dream. "It's okay," I whispered, crouching by her bed. "You're safe with me." She sat up slowly, her movements stiff and unpracticed, but with a determination that broke my heart. "Will they come home today?" "No," I said firmly. "They won't be back for almost 2 weeks. We have time." Time for what? Her voice was so small. "Time to prove the truth," I said, brushing her hair away from her face. "But first I need to know everything. Everything you know about what they've done." Over breakfast, a simple bowl of oatmeal she ate with trembling eagerness, she told me her story in broken, whispered fragments. How her mother began giving her special pink medicine after her grandparents died. How she used to scream and fight, so Amanda locked her in a dark closet until she stopped struggling. How her grandmother and grandfather told her she was born broken, that no one would ever love a child like her. How Robert would sit beside her bed at night, his voice cold and cruel, whispering, "If you ever speak a word to anyone, you'll disappear, just like your father did. No one will care." My stomach twisted. I clenched my fists so hard my nails cut crescents into my palms, but I forced myself to stay calm, to stay rational, because rage wouldn't save her. I needed evidence. "Lily," I said softly, "do you know where your mommy keeps her important papers?" She nodded quickly. "In her office, bottom drawer. There's a key under the plant." She led me down the marble hallway, limping slightly to Amanda's private office, a pristine, designer-decorated room that looked like it belonged in a lifestyle magazine. White, lacquered desk, plush cream carpet, shelves lined with unread business books and untouched designer notebooks. The entire space smelled like vanilla and expensive perfume. Following Lily's instructions, I lifted the heavy ceramic pot by the window. Sure enough, taped to the underside was a small brass key. My hand shook as I unlocked the bottom filing cabinet drawer. Inside was a treasure trove of meticulously organized folders. Financial documents stamped with the Blackwell family, Cress, Lily's maternal grandparents. Trust agreements, quarterly reports, legal correspondence outlining the terms of the $4 million fund left to Lily upon their death. My eyes darted over the lines of legalese until one sentence burned into my brain: funds to be held in trust until beneficiary reaches 18 years of age or is deemed mentally incapable of managing assets independently. Mentally incapable. The words felt like acid against my skin. I flipped through the folders until I found another document, an evaluation request for a full psychiatric assessment upon Lily's 18th birthday to determine permanent incapacity and trustee continuity. Signed by Amanda and Robert. Tears blurred my vision. They weren't just drugging her to control her now. They planned to keep her sedated and silent forever. "Look," Lily whispered, pointing to another folder labeled medical. Inside were stacks of falsified records, diagnoses from neurologists, prescriptions for powerful sedatives and muscle relaxants, and evaluation notes describing Lily as nonverbal, non-responsive, with minimal cognitive function. My rage burned hotter with every page I turned. At the very bottom of the stack, tucked into a plastic sleeve, was her original birth record and pediatric reports. Healthy, normal developmental milestones, walking by 12 months, first words at 14 months. Then abruptly at age 3, her medical history became a horror show of sudden neurological decline. The exact year her grandparents died. I felt sick. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but I didn't. Instead, I photographed every page, every document, every signature, with my phone uploading it to a secure cloud folder I set up within minutes. "Lily," I said quietly, "is there anywhere else they keep papers about you?" She bit her lip, thinking hard. "Mommy has a safe." "In her bedroom?" "Behind the big flower painting." Together we climbed the sweeping staircase to Amanda's bedroom. It was a cavern of cream silk sheets, mirrored vanities, and designer shopping bags. Behind the enormous oil painting of peonies was a small digital safe. I tried Amanda's birthday. Nothing. Then Lily's birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside were jewelry boxes, cash envelopes, a silver revolver that made my blood run cold, and a slim black USB drive. I tucked the drive into my pocket before Lily could see the gun. We replaced everything carefully and closed the safe. Back in the guest room, I plugged the drive into Amanda's laptop. My heart pounded as folders loaded videos of Lily as a toddler, laughing, running barefoot in the garden, squealing as she played with bubbles. Scans of her grandparents' original will confirming the $4 million trust and referencing a larger secondary trust to transfer when Lily turned 25, nearly $50 million, but only if she was mentally competent and in control of her primary inheritance. I sat back numb with horror and revelation. This wasn't about $4 million. They were playing a long game for a fortune 10 times that amount. "Lily," I whispered, my voice breaking, "do you understand what this means?" She nodded solemnly. "They're keeping me sick so I can't get my money." Tears spilled down my cheeks. I pulled her close, burying my face in her hair. "I swear to you, baby, I will not let them win. Do you hear me? I will not let them take your life away." She wrapped her thin arms around my neck, her breath hot against my skin. "Please don't leave me alone." "Never," I vowed. "Never." That night, as she slept curled beside me, I typed a long message to my best friend Lauren Bishop, a family lawyer specializing in child advocacy. I told her everything, attaching photos, videos, and documents. Within minutes, she called back, her voice trembling with contained fury. "Jessica, if what you've sent me is accurate, this is Jesus Christ. This is criminal medical abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy, fraud, possibly attempted murder." "I know," I whispered, staring at Lily's sleeping face. "I'm coming over tomorrow," Lauren said firmly. "Don't confront them yet. Gather everything you can. We're going to save that child, I promise." After we hung up, I lay awake until dawn, listening to the rain pound against the windows like a war drum. My life had changed forever. I was no longer just a teacher, a wife, an outsider. I was a soldier. And this was war. Morning came with a heavy silence that felt almost suffocating. Lily woke curled against my side, her small hands fisted in my t-shirt as if terrified I would vanish overnight. When her eyes blinked open and found mine, relief flooded her face. She sat up slowly, wincing at the ache in her muscles, unused to real movement. "Is it today?" she whispered. I brushed her hair back, tucking a golden strand behind her ear. "Today is the beginning," I said softly. "We have a lot to do." While she dressed in sweatpants and a cotton tee from her closet, clothes clearly never worn, before I set up my laptop on the guest room desk and called Lauren over encrypted video chat. She answered on the first ring, her sharp brown eyes scanning my face for any cracks in my resolve. "Jess," she breathed, her voice tight with urgency. "I went through everything you sent last night. This is it's horrific, but it's also airtight. Medical child abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, conspiracy. They're looking at decades in prison." A shaky exhale escaped my lips. "How do we start?" Lauren leaned forward. "First, keep documenting every conversation you have with Lily, every document, every video, Upload copies to multiple secure drives. I've set up a cloud folder only you and I can access. Second, do not confront them directly until we have law enforcement and child protective services involved. These people are dangerous. If they suspect you're onto them, they could disappear with her or worse. I swallowed hard, my gaze drifting to Lily, who sat quietly on the edge of the bed, hugging her knees to her chest as she listened. I need to keep her off the medication, I whispered. If I keep giving it to her, I'm just as guilty. Lauren nodded grimly. You're right, but document that choice. Record her physical state before and after. If her condition improves off the drugs, which it will, it becomes indisputable evidence of medical abuse. I felt my chest tighten with panic. Lauren, they have money, power. They'll bury this. They'll bury me. She shook her head firmly. Not if we play it smart. I'll start drafting emergency guardianship filings today. But Jess, are you ready for this? Because once we start, there's no going back. I looked at Lily. Her blonde head bowed her shoulders, trembling under the weight of fear she had carried alone for so long. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Yes, I whispered, I'm ready. Okay, Lauren said. Today gather everything you can. Videos, documents, even photos of her standing, walking, talking. Record her statements about what they've done. I'll coordinate with CPS and a trusted detective. We'll move as soon as we have everything in place. We ended the call with a plan, but my stomach twisted with dread. I wasn't a lawyer or a cop. I was just a teacher standing alone against one of the wealthiest families in the state. But I wasn't really alone anymore. That day, Lily and I worked quietly, but methodically. She showed me where Amanda kept files in her office, inside her walk-in closet behind a false panel. There we found trust amendments signed but not yet court-approved, granting Amanda permanent control over Lily's money regardless of her competence. Bank transfers from the trust to offshore accounts under Amanda and Robert's names. Draft psychiatric evaluations declaring Lily permanently incapacitated. I photographed every page, uploading it to Lauren's cloud folder. The deeper we dug, the more horrifying it became. Each document was another puzzle piece confirming a truth so monstrous it barely felt real. When Lily grew tired, I set up my phone and recorded a video interview with her sitting cross-legged on her bed. She spoke softly, her voice trembling, but clear, explaining how the medication made her sleepy and weak, how her mother pinched her arms when she resisted, how Grandpa whispered threats late at night. At one point, she paused, tears streaming down her cheeks. Do you think Mommy ever loved me? Even a little. My heart broke all over again. I moved the camera aside and wrapped her in my arms, burying my face in her hair. She doesn't know how to love anyone, I whispered. But I do. And I promise you, Lily, you're going to be loved for the rest of your life. That night, after Lily fell asleep curled against me, I sat on the balcony under the blanket of silent stars, my phone pressed to my ear as Lauren spoke in hushed urgency. We're almost ready, she said. But Jess, there's one problem. I closed my eyes, dread filling every vein. What is it, your husband? My chest tightened painfully. Michael, what about him? He's in Montgomery. If he sides with them, he could sabotage everything. We can't risk him tipping them off. I swallowed hard, memories flashing through my mind. Michael's quiet kindness, his blind loyalty to his family, his desperation to avoid conflict at all costs. I don't know if I can trust him with this, I whispered. Then don't, Lauren said firmly. Not yet. We move fast. We move quiet, and we keep Lily safe. I'm filing the emergency guardianship tomorrow. The detective is ready to coordinate with CPS for a welfare check and seizure of evidence. But Jess, once this starts, you need to be ready for war. I closed my eyes, feeling the night breeze brush my face like a warning. I'm ready, I said softly. They have no idea who they're dealing with. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time watching the dark horizon turn to dawn. I thought about my life before this grading spelling tests, worrying about dinner parties, wondering if Eleanor liked my dress. All of it felt so small now, meaningless, because now I had a purpose. Now I had Lily. When the sun rose, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, I knew it wasn't just the beginning of a new day. It was the beginning of the fight that would define my life. I walked back inside, watching Lily sleeping soundly for the first time in years, her breathing steady and peaceful without the poison coursing through her veins. I brushed a kiss across her forehead and whispered, "Today we start taking back your life." Because tomorrow, everything would change. That morning, the mansion felt different. The air was heavy with a stillness that clung to my skin, thick and unmoving, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Light slanted in through tall windows, illuminating floating motes of dust, each one drifting with eerie calm. It was the kind of morning where even the clocks seemed to tick quieter. Lily sat at the kitchen counter, her legs swinging above the floor, her small hands trembling as she scooped oatmeal into her mouth with rigid precision. Every few seconds, her eyes flicked to the doorway as though she expected someone to appear at any moment. She didn't speak, and I didn't force her to. The silence felt safer. Inside my chest, dread pressed hard like acid, eating through my ribs. Today was the day Lauren filed for emergency guardianship. The day everything shifted from fear to action. I checked my phone constantly, unable to focus on anything else. Each minute crawled past my pulse, thrumming with nauseating rhythm. At 10:13 a.m., the screen finally lit up with a message. Filing complete. CPS and Detective Ramirez would coordinate. They would arrive tomorrow morning. Hold strong. Do not alert Michael or the family. Tomorrow. Just one more day. One more day to keep Lily safe. One more day to gather anything that could protect her. I slipped my phone into my pocket and forced my voice to sound gentle as I suggested baking cookies. Her eyes widened with something close to disbelief, a flicker of pure, unfiltered wonder. She had never baked cookies before. That truth lodged itself in my throat like glass. We spent the morning sifting flour and measuring sugar. Butter softened under her warm fingers as she mashed it into the bowl. Chocolate chips spilled across the counter like tiny fallen stars. Her giggles rose softly when dough stuck to her nose, and for those precious hours, she was simply a child. I filmed short clips of her stirring, smiling, whispering questions, each video another fragment of evidence, proof of her mind, her soul, her personhood. The scent of baking cookies filled the kitchen by noon, warm and sweet, clashing with the tension twisting deeper into my chest. Every sound set me on edge, the tick of the oven timer, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant groan of old pipes. Then my phone buzzed with Michael's name on the screen. My stomach dropped. I answered, forcing brightness into my voice as his distracted questions filtered through the line. He mentioned Eleanor had tried to call me, that she had a strange feeling something was wrong. His words chilled me. Eleanor's feelings were never intuition. They were calculations sharpened into weapons. I hung up my fingers, trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Fear burned in my veins, swift and poisonous. I tried to hide it from Lily as we sat reading Charlotte's Web on the living room couch, her small body pressed against mine for warmth she didn't know how to ask for. At 4:32 p.m., the front gates chimed. The sound rang through the house like a funeral bell. My heart seized. I checked the security monitor. A sleek black Mercedes glided up the driveway, its tinted windows reflecting the late afternoon light in cold flashes. Eleanor. A wave of nausea rolled through me. They weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow. Panic rose like bile. I turned to Lily, gripping her hands in mine, whispering reminders of what we'd practiced. Stay quiet. Don't speak unless told. Stay small. Stay invisible. Her eyes filled with terror, her thin shoulders trembling, but she nodded with solemn obedience. The front door swung open without urgency, as if the house itself parted for her. Eleanor stepped inside, wrapped in silent power, her tailored navy suit uncreased despite travel pearl earrings gleaming beneath perfect blonde hair. She moved with glacial calm, her gaze sweeping the foyer, cataloging the smallest details. When her eyes landed on me, they held nothing. Human-only calculation, cold and meticulous. She set her handbag down with deliberate precision and removed her sunglasses, slowly revealing eyes as pale and sharp as winter light. Without a word, she walked into the kitchen, surveying the countertops, the dishes, the oven still warm from cookies. The smell of chocolate chip and brown sugar clashed with her perfume, a sterile floral that burned the back of my throat. She called out instructions for dinner as she inspected the house, her voice smooth and edged with steel. No questions, no interest in my responses, only command. Every syllable reminded me of my place. I watched her climb the stairs, her movements graceful and unhurried, as though she had all the time in the world to dismantle us piece by piece. When she disappeared from view, my knees gave out. I sank onto the couch beside Lily, pulling her into my arms. Her tears soaked through my shirt as she pressed her face into my side, seeking protection I wasn't sure I could give. They were back early. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. Fear clawed at my chest, each breath shallow and ragged. I held her tighter, feeling her small heartbeat thudding against my ribs, trying to calm her trembling with a stillness I didn't possess. Outside, shadows deepened across the lawn as the sun sank below the tree line. Inside, dread pooled in every corner of the silent mansion. We were so close, but deep in my bones beneath the fear, a colder truth took root. They knew. And the Montgomerys never moved without a plan. Dinner that night felt like walking into a lion's den. The table was set with bone china crystal glasses gleaming under the chandelier. Eleanor sat at the head, her posture perfect, lips curved in her signature frosty smile. Amanda sat beside her, swirling wine with trembling fingers. Lily sat strapped in her wheelchair, head bowed, silent as ever. I took my seat across from Robert just as he entered. His presence sucked the warmth from the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a charcoal suit with a sapphire tie, he radiated quiet menace. His blue eyes flicked around the table before settling on me. "Jessica," he rumbled, slicing into his lamb with surgical precision. "How has everything been in our absence?" I swallowed my throat dry. "Fine. Lily's been good. Her medication?" he asked casually, though his gaze felt like a blade. "All given as prescribed," I lied. He set his fork down with deliberate calm, folding his large hands on the table. The silence was suffocating. "You're a smart woman," he said softly. "You understand loyalty and the consequences of betrayal." My pulse roared in my ears. Across the table, Amanda's eyes brimmed with tears as she stared at her untouched plate. Eleanor dabbed her lips with a linen napkin, watching me with cool calculation. Robert leaned back, draping an arm over his chair. "Lily is a very delicate situation. It would be unfortunate if anyone interfered with her treatment." My chest tightened. Under the table, I squeezed Lily's small, cold hand. She didn't move, but her fingers curled faintly around mine. After dessert, Robert stood adjusting his cufflinks. "Amanda, come." Amanda rose, brushing past me with glassy eyes. As she wheeled Lily away, she whispered, "Be good, please." Then they were gone, leaving me alone with Eleanor, who regarded me like something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. "Jessica," she said sweetly, her voice dripping venom, "don't get ideas above your station. Remember who you're dealing with." I forced myself to hold her gaze, even as terror coiled in my gut. "She's a child, your granddaughter." Eleanor's lips curled into a cruel smile. "She's an asset." My hands clenched under the table. Rage burned through my veins, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. I won't let you keep hurting her. Her eyes narrowed sharp and cold. And what exactly do you think you can do? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She saw it in my eyes, the quiet defiance, the determination she couldn't crush with threats or money. She rose gracefully, gathering her napkin. "Clean up this table, Jessica. You're making a mess of my dining room." She left without another word, her heels clicking against the marble like gunshots. I sat there, my entire body shaking. Under the table, I felt the ghost of Lily's grip on my fingers, her silent plea echoing in my chest. They know. They knew I was onto them. And now the real war was about to begin. That night, the mansion was silent. Too silent. I lay awake in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling as moonlight spilled through the tall windows. Beside me, Lily slept curled against my side, her breathing shallow and uneven. Every few minutes, she whimpered softly in her sleep, her small fingers fisting in my t-shirt like she feared I might vanish if she let go. My mind raced with everything that had happened at dinner. Robert's thinly veiled threats, Eleanor's cold disdain, Amanda's haunted eyes. They knew I was onto them. And now it was only a matter of time before they made their move. A single terrifying thought pulsed in my chest. What if they take her before CPS arrives tomorrow? What if they disappear with her forever? I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Lily, and tiptoed onto the balcony. The night air was cool against my burning skin. My hands trembled as I dialed Lauren's number. She answered on the first ring, her voice low and urgent. "Jess." "What's wrong? They're back," I whispered, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Robert, Eleanor, Amanda." They came back early. They confronted me at dinner. They know something is wrong. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Damn it. "Okay, listen to me. CPS and Detective Ramirez are scheduled for tomorrow at noon. You just need to keep her safe until then." "I don't think I can." I choked out, tears blurring my vision. "Lauren, they're dangerous. I think they're going to move her. Tonight. Or early morning. Before anyone arrives." "Then we move now," she said firmly. "I'll call Ramirez. He can coordinate with on-call CPS for an emergency welfare check. But Jess, are you sure you're ready for this?" I closed my eyes, feeling tears slip down my cheeks. "She's just a little girl, Lauren. She wants to go to school. She wants friends. She wants her mom to love her, and they're drugging her into silence for money. If I don't do this, if I let them take her back, she'll never have a chance." There was silence on the line for a moment. Then Lauren spoke, her voice trembling with quiet fury. "You're doing the right thing. Stay with her. Don't let her out of your sight. Ramirez will call you back within the hour. If they try to leave before then, you call 911 and say you suspect child abduction. Do you hear me?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Yeah, I hear you." "Jess," she added softly, "I know you're scared, but you're stronger than you think. You're her only hope right now." After we hung up, I stayed on the balcony, gripping the cold railing as tears slid silently down my face. Below, the mansion grounds stretched out in shadowed perfection, manicured lawns, silent fountains, stone pathways winding toward the tall iron gates. Somewhere in those shadows, I imagined Robert watching me from his study window, his blue eyes sharp with calculation. I wiped my tears away and returned to the bedroom. Lily stirred as I lay back down beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with sleep and fear. "Is it morning?" she whispered. "Not yet," I said softly, brushing hair from her forehead. "Go back to sleep. I'm right here." She nestled closer, her thin arms wrapping around my waist. "Don't leave me," she murmured. "Never," I whispered. But as I held her, feeling her small heartbeat flutter against mine, one truth burned in my chest with terrifying clarity. If I wanted to save Lily, I would have to risk everything: my job, my marriage, my safety, even my life. Because the Montgomerys wouldn't let her go without a fight, and neither would I. Dawn broke with pale, cold light spilling across marble floors. I hadn't slept. Lily woke curled against me, blinking sleep from her eyes, looking almost peaceful for a fleeting moment, before fear flickered across her face as she remembered where she was. She asked in a trembling whisper if it was today. I swallowed hard, brushed hair from her forehead, told her yes. Today was the day. Downstairs, the mansion pulsed with quiet urgency. Robert's voice barked orders sharp as gunshots. Amanda's heels clicked across the foyer. In brisk rhythms, Eleanor spoke in clipped, icy tones on the phone. Peeking through balcony curtains, I saw staff loading suitcases into a waiting town car. They were leaving. They were going to take her. Panic thundered through my chest. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, vibrating with an urgency that made my hands shake. Lauren's message glowed. CPS and Ramirez en route. ETA 20 minutes? Hold them there. 20 minutes. That was all I needed. I helped Lily sit up, telling her softly we needed to get ready. I dressed her quickly in jeans and a pink t-shirt, tying her hair into a loose ponytail while her small hands trembled. She whispered that she was scared. I cupped her face, told her she was the bravest girl I'd ever met, that today she got to be free. In the foyer, Robert turned from the driver, his eyes narrowing when he saw us. He informed me coolly they were leaving early. Amanda had appointments. Lily's therapy session was moved up and ordered me to help Amanda get her into the car. My pulse roared in my ears, but I forced a calm smile, asking if she shouldn't take her medication first. His eyes flicked to the staff before cutting back to me, voice low and edged with threat as he told me she'd take it at the facility, snapping when I tried to protest, ordering me again with dangerous finality. Amanda hovered nearby, pale and drawn, gathering Lily's blanket and stuffed rabbit. Lily reached out with trembling fingers and called her mommy in a tiny broken whisper. Amanda froze, tears welling something like love softening her face for half a second before Robert's hand landed hard on her shoulder. Her eyes went blank as she turned away. The front gates chimed. The sound cut through the foyer like a blade. Everyone froze. The driver shifted nervously. Robert's eyes narrowed. Eleanor appeared at the top of the stairs, phone clutched, tight gaze as cold as the morning light. Robert barked out a demand to know who it was. A staff member peeked through the window, voice unsteady as he said it was police and child services. The air turned brittle, dangerous. Rage flashed across Robert's face as he hissed at me, demanding what I had done. I stood taller, gripping Lily's wheelchair so hard my knuckles burned, telling him I did what I had to do. Eleanor descended slowly, her mask of calm cracking, with each step venom dripping from her words as she called me a stupid girl and spat that I had no idea who I was dealing with. My voice shook, but held as I told her I did. The doorbell rang again. Robert gestured sharply to Amanda to get Lily out the back, voice snapping like a whip. But before she could move, Detective Ramirez's voice boomed through the foyer as he entered with 2 officers and a woman wearing a CPS badge. Ramirez called out Robert's name, announcing they were there regarding concerns of medical child abuse and financial exploitation. Robert stepped forward with slick charm, insisting there was a misunderstanding, that his daughter was severely disabled, that this was a private family matter. Ramirez ordered him aside, voice of steel, then turned to the CPS worker who knelt before Lily, introducing herself softly and asking for her name. Silence pressed down on the room. Amanda covered her mouth, tears streaming. Robert's face flushed crimson with fury. Eleanor's hands shook at her sides. Then Lily whispered, voice trembling, that her name was Lily Montgomery. The woman asked how she felt. Lily glanced at me, eyes wide with fear and hope, and I nodded through tears. She said she felt good, better when she didn't take the pink medicine. The CPS worker stood, her expression darkening, as she ordered officers to escort Robert, Eleanor, and Amanda for questioning. Robert thundered in rage, shouting they couldn't do this, that it was their family, their money. Ramirez raised an eyebrow, thanking him for clarifying motive as officers moved swiftly, guiding them away despite their protests. Lily trembled in her chair, tears streaming down her cheeks. I knelt beside her, gripping her small hands, whispering it was over, that she was safe now. Her lips quivered as she asked if she really was. I pulled her into my arms, pressing my forehead to hers, telling her yes. She was really safe. But as Ramirez turned back to us with a grave, tired expression, I knew deep down this was only the beginning. The next weeks passed in a blur of courtrooms, interviews, and therapy sessions. Robert and Eleanor were charged with medical child abuse, financial exploitation of a minor conspiracy, and fraud. Amanda, desperate to save herself, testified against them in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her tears on the witness stand were bitter and empty, a final performance in a lifetime of illusions. But their power couldn't protect them anymore. Photos of their arrest plastered the news. Their real estate empire crumbled as investors pulled out, unwilling to associate with a family who had drugged a child for her inheritance. For Lily, freedom came in slow, trembling steps. The first time she walked into the sunlight without pretending to be paralyzed, she cried, clutching my hand so tightly I thought her bones might break. We enrolled her in a small private school. She was terrified that first morning, standing behind me as other kids chattered and laughed, her backpack hanging from thin shoulders. "Do you think they'll like me?" she whispered. I knelt, brushing hair from her face. "They're going to love you," I said softly. "Just be yourself." And they did. Within weeks, she was coming home with crayon drawings of her new friends, chattering about recess and spelling bees and snack swaps. Every night she fell asleep curled against me, no longer from fear, but from exhausted, contented peace. Michael and I worked to rebuild what the Montgomerys had broken in us. For a long time, I couldn't look at him without remembering the blind loyalty that nearly cost Lily her life. But each day as he packed her lunches, braided her hair awkwardly before school, and sat beside her during nightmares, something in me healed. One evening as we sat on the porch watching Lily chase fireflies barefoot in the grass, Michael turned to me, tears glinting in his eyes. "I don't deserve either of you," he whispered. I took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Maybe not," I said honestly, "but you're here. And that's what matters." In the end, the courts granted us full guardianship. Lily's trust fund was secured under an independent financial manager, protected from anyone who might exploit her again. Therapy helped her unlearn the terror she had been forced to call love. Slowly, she began to smile without flinching, to laugh without glancing over her shoulder in fear. On her first Christmas with us, she woke before dawn, sneaking into our room and crawling into bed between us, her small body warm under the thick quilts. As the sun rose pink and gold across the frosted windows, she looked up at me with sleepy, content eyes. "Can I call you Mommy?" she whispered. Tears burned behind my eyes as I kissed her forehead. "You can call me whatever you want," I said softly. "I'm just happy you're here." She smiled, a real bright smile that lit her whole face, and snuggled closer. That morning, as we sat together under the twinkling lights of the Christmas tree, Michael's arm around my shoulders and Lily curled in my lap, unwrapping gifts with breathless excitement, I realized something profound. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up when your world is dark and broken. Family is who chooses to stay, even when loving you costs everything. And for the first time in my life, I felt it in my bones. We were a family, a real one. The Montgomerys had built their empire on cruelty, fear, and greed. But standing there, holding Lily's hand as she placed a handmade star atop the tree, I knew the truth. Their power was nothing compared to the strength of one small, brave girl who refused to be silenced, and the woman who chose to fight beside her.